In a dusty corner of a Detroit auto plant, a group of seasoned engineers laughed when Aisha, the black daughter of the night janitor, was seen tinkering with a rusted engine that had stumped them for a decade. Their smirks turned to silence when she fired it up, its roar echoing through the factory, proving that the girl they dismissed had outsmarted them all. Aisha was 22, a wiry young woman with a sharp mind and calloused hands. She'd grown up in the shadow of her father, Clarence, who'd been sweeping floors and cleaning offices at the Motor City assembly plant for 30 years. The plant was a relic of Detroit's industrial heyday, its brick walls stained with decades of grease, and its machinery a mix of cutting-edge and obsolete. Clarence was a quiet man, proud but unassuming, and Aisha was his only child. She'd inherited his work ethic and his knack for fixing things, though she'd never set foot in a college classroom. Instead, her education came from late nights in her father's garage, where he taught her to tear apart engines and put them back together. The plant was a tough place for anyone, but especially for someone like Aisha. She wasn't an employee, just a familiar face who sometimes brought her father lunch or hung around after hours to help him with small tasks. The engineers, mostly older men with degrees and years of experience, ran the show. They were a tight-knit group, quick to dismiss anyone who didn't have credentials or a title. Aisha, with her faded jeans and old t-shirts, didn't fit their idea of expertise. To them, she was just the janitor's daughter, someone who didn't belong near their machines. It started in the summer of 2024. The plant was under pressure to meet production quotas, and the engineers were struggling with a bottleneck in the assembly line. At the heart of the problem was an old V8 engine, a prototype from a failed project 10 years earlier. It was a beast of a machine, designed for a high-performance model that never made it to market. The engine had been mothballed in a corner of the plant, covered in dust and cobwebs, its internals a mystery no one had solved. Every few years, an engineer would take a crack at it, hoping to revive it and prove their worth. None succeeded. The engine was declared dead, a symbol of failure that haunted the plant's reputation. Aisha had seen the engine countless times. It sat in a forgotten bay, surrounded by crates and old tools. She'd overheard the engineers talking about it, their voices dripping with frustration. To them, it was a puzzle with missing pieces. To Aisha, it was a challenge. She'd always been curious, the kind of person who couldn't walk past a broken machine without wanting to fix it. Her father had taught her to respect machinery, to listen to its sounds and feel its rhythms. Engines talk, he'd say. You just gotta know how to listen. One evening, after Clarence finished his shift, Aisha stayed late. She'd been coming to the plant more often, partly to spend time with her father, partly because she loved the hum of the place. The engineers had left for the day, and the factory was quiet except for the distant clang of a forklift. Aisha wandered over to the V8, running her hand along its rusted casing. She didn't have permission to touch it, but curiosity got the better of her. She grabbed a wrench from her father's toolbox and started poking around, just to see what she could learn. The next day, one of the engineers, a man named Tom Bradley, caught her near the engine. Tom was in his 50s, with a graying beard and a loud voice that carried across the factory floor. He was the lead engineer, respected but prickly, with little patience for outsiders. "What do you think you're doing?" he barked, his arms crossed. Aisha, in her faded jeans and a t-shirt with oil stains, looked up from the engine. "Just looking," she said, her voice steady but quiet. Tom laughed, a harsh sound that drew the attention of two other engineers, Mike and Greg, who were nearby. "Looking? Girl, that engine's been dead longer than you've been alive. Leave it to the professionals." Aisha didn't flinch, but she felt the sting of his words. Mike, younger and cockier, joined in. "What's the janitor's kid gonna do? Sweep it into working?" Greg, quieter but no less dismissive, shook his head and muttered something about kids these days. Aisha didn't respond. She just nodded and walked away, but not before glancing back at the engine. She'd seen something, a loose fitting, a hint of where that didn't look right. She filed it away in her mind. Word spread among the engineers that Aisha had been messing with the V8. It became a running joke. They'd see her in the break room or passing through the plant and make comments. "Fix that engine yet, Aisha?" they'd say, smirking. "Got your PhD in engineering ready?" She ignored them, but their words gnawed at her. She wasn't trying to prove anything to them. She just wanted to understand the machine. But their mockery lit a fire in her, a quiet determination to show them what she could do. Aisha started spending more time at the plant after hours. Clarence didn't mind. He was proud of her curiosity, though he warned her to be careful. "Those engineers don't like being shown up," he said. Aisha nodded, but she wasn't deterred. She'd wait until the factory was empty, then slip into the bay with the V8. She brought her own tools, a mix of her father's old wrenches and some she'd bought secondhand. She studied the engine methodically, taking notes on a small pad she kept in her pocket. She didn't have access to the technical manuals the engineers used, but she had something they didn't: intuition honed by years of fixing cars with her father. The V8 was a mess. Its fuel lines were clogged, its pistons seized, and its electrical system was a tangle of frayed wires. Aisha worked slowly, cleaning components, testing connections, and listening to the engine's voice. She found a cracked gasket that had likely caused a pressure leak, a detail the engineers had overlooked. She replaced it with a spare she found in the plant's scrap pile. She adjusted the timing belt, which was off by a fraction but enough to throw the whole system out of whack. Each fix was small, but together, they started to bring the engine back to life. The engineers noticed her presence, but didn't take it seriously. They'd walk by the bay, see her hunched over the engine, and laugh. "Still playing mechanic, huh?" Tom said one day, leaning against a crate. Aisha didn't look up. "Just trying to help," she said. Mike, standing nearby, snorted. "Help? You're gonna break it worse than it already is." Aisha let the comment slide, but she was getting closer. She could feel it. The engine was starting to respond, its parts aligning in a way they hadn't in years. One of the other workers, a mechanic named Jamal who'd known Clarence for years, took an interest in Aisha's work. He was in his 30s, with a quick smile and a deep knowledge of the plant's machinery. Unlike the engineers, he didn't care about titles or degrees. He'd seen Aisha's focus and recognized her talent. "You're onto something, aren't you?" he said one evening, watching her adjust a valve. Aisha shrugged, but gave him a small smile. "Maybe." Jamal didn't push, but he started checking in on her, offering advice or a spare tool when she needed it. The breakthrough came on a Friday night in late August. Aisha had been working on the engine for weeks, her hands stained with grease, her notebook filled with diagrams and observations. She'd rewired the ignition system, cleaned the fuel injectors, and replaced a worn-out bearing she'd salvaged from another machine. The plant was quiet, the only sound the hum of the overhead lights. Clarence was finishing his rounds, and Jamal was nearby, watching from a distance. Aisha connected the battery, checked the fuel line one last time, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. The sound was deafening, a deep, throaty rumble that shook the bay. Aisha stepped back, her heart pounding, a rare grin breaking across her face. Jamal let out a whoop, clapping her on the shoulder. Clarence, hearing the noise, rushed over, his eyes wide with pride. "You did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Aisha nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans. She didn't say much, but the engine's roar said it all. The next morning, the engineers arrived to find the V8 running smoothly in the bay. They stood around it, stunned, their usual banter replaced by silence. Tom's face was red, his jaw tight. Mike looked confused, muttering, "How the hell?" Greg just stared at the engine, shaking his head. Jamal, who'd stayed late to help Aisha test the engine, was there to fill them in. "Aisha fixed it," he said simply, pointing to her. She was standing off to the side, her arms crossed, her expression calm but unyielding. The engineers didn't know what to say. Tom tried to brush it off, saying something about beginner's luck, but his voice lacked conviction. Mike avoided Aisha's eyes, suddenly interested in his clipboard. Greg, to his credit, nodded at her, a silent acknowledgement of her skill. The news spread through the plant like wildfire. Workers gathered around the bay, marveling at the engine that had been dead for a decade. The plant manager, a gruff woman named Linda, came down to see it for herself. She listened to the engine, then looked at Aisha. "You did this?" she asked. Aisha nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Linda didn't smile, but her eyes softened. She asked Aisha to walk her through the fixes, and Aisha explained each step, clearing the fuel lines, replacing the gasket, rewiring the ignition. Linda listened, nodding, then turned to the engineers. "Why didn't any of you figure this out?" she asked. Tom started to stammer an excuse, but Linda cut him off. "Doesn't matter. Aisha, you're hired. Start Monday." Aisha's hiring was a quiet affair, but it sent ripples through the plant. She was given an entry-level mechanic's position, working under Jamal's supervision. The engineers didn't mock her anymore. Tom kept his distance, his ego bruised. Mike tried to make small talk once, but Aisha wasn't interested in pleasantries. Greg, though, started asking her questions about the engine, genuine curiosity in his voice. Aisha answered when she felt like it, but she didn't go out of her way to prove herself. She'd already done that. Clarence couldn't stop smiling. He didn't say much, but the way he looked at Aisha said it all. He'd always known she was capable of great things, and now others were starting to see it too. Aisha didn't let the attention go to her head. She showed up to work every day, her toolbox in hand, ready to learn and fix whatever came her way. The V8 was moved to a testing area, where it became a point of pride for the plant. A reminder that sometimes the answers come from the people you least expect. The story of Aisha and the engine didn't stay confined to the factory. A local reporter got wind of it, and soon, a small article appeared in the Detroit Free Press, titled, "Janitor's Daughter Revives Decade-Dead Engine." It was a short piece, but it caught the attention of a community college professor who reached out to Aisha, offering her a scholarship to study automotive engineering. Aisha wasn't sure at first. She'd never seen herself as a college type, but Jamal and her father convinced her to give it a shot. She enrolled part-time, balancing classes with her job at the plant. The engineers never openly apologized, but their behavior changed. Tom stopped making snide comments, focusing instead on his own work. Mike started treating Aisha with a grudging respect, asking her opinion on minor repairs. Greg became her biggest supporter among the engineers, even recommending her for a special project to overhaul another old machine. Aisha didn't hold grudges. She was too focused on the work, but she didn't forget how they'd treated her either. Years later, when Aisha graduated with her engineering degree, the plant threw a small celebration. Linda, now nearing retirement, gave a short speech calling Aisha the future of this place. Clarence was there, beaming, his janitor's uniform pressed and clean. Aisha didn't say much, but she thanked her father and Jamal for believing in her. The V8 engine, still running strong, was on display in the plant's lobby, a plaque beside it reading, "Restored by Aisha Thompson, 2024. It was a quiet nod to a young woman who'd turned mockery into triumph, proving that skill and determination could outshine any degree or title.